What do you want, Mr. Quaid?
The same as you, to remember.
But why?
To be myself again.
You are what you do. A man is defined by his action, not his memory. Please, take my hand. Now, open your mind to me, please. Open your mind. Open your mind. Open your mind. Open your mind. Open your mind.
There are a lot of people in this world that I hate, but nobody boils my blood quite like Elon Musk. I hate him. I hate him so much, and he's everywhere. Unavoidable figure in my life, in yours, and he will be exposed eventually. But for now, we have to look at his ugly fat face frequently. And he's not even that evil because he's not really pulling the strings. He's just the face. He's more like the fruit of evil. The tree of evil is the machine that allows his stupid fucking bullshit, and allows him to sit on this fake throne of wealth and power, because it's not real. His money isn't real. And he's constantly in the news, just nonstop, and his followers are of the worst kind. Most recently, he was seen looking incredibly stupid, wearing a cowboy hat and ginning up bloodlust for desperate migrants across the Texas border. There was this video of him standing between migrants with razor wire in between, and he's like goofily waving at them like ha ha ha, like really sinister shit. Intolerable. If you think he's some kind of autistic genius, you'd be half right. Not long ago, when Miami was trying to be the crypto center of the world, Musk visited Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, who was the Bitcoin mayor, and he's currently under federal investigation for fraud. Birds of a feather stuff. Well, Musk, and back then, proposed building one of his useless tunnels with his stupid, boring company to build a tunnel under Miami to ease traffic congestion. And if you've ever been to Miami, traffic there, it's worse than LA, in my opinion. Mayor Suarez didn't bother to correct or inform Musk that that is entirely impossible. In Florida, especially South Florida, you dig a few feet, you hit water. You can't build a tunnel in the already porous limestone. But nobody corrected him. He never also was like, oops, my bad. He just continues to get to say stupid shit. And it's just constant stupid ideas. But the stupidest idea that Musk has been talking about for, a better part of a decade now has got to be space colonization. For years he's touted terraforming Mars, building space colonies on Mars with his SpaceX company. He believes in this need to extend humanity into the stars. Fairly recently, he was on Joe Rogan talking about why we ought to colonize Mars.
How much time before there's regular travel back and forth to Mars, roughly? Like a real civilization on Mars?
Well, I think it's going to take a while to build a real civilization. The threshold that really matters is, do we have enough resources on Mars such that if the spaceships from Earth stop coming,
You could survive.
Yeah. You got to have all the things necessary to sustain civilization on Mars. And the reason that the ships from Earth stop coming could be World War III or slow decline of civilization. So civilization here on Earth could end with a bang or a whimper. We're getting past the Great Filter to become a multi-planet species. Species that does not become multiplanetary, simply waiting around until there is some extinction event, either self-inflicted or external. It's like, do you want a future where we're out there among the stars, exploring the universe, or do you want a future where we're stuck on Earth forever?
Space colonization ain't gonna happen. It is the pipiest of pipe dreams. We cannot leave this planet, and we can't leave it, especially in these bodies. Maybe we could leave this planet if we can upload our brains onto computers. But that ain't gonna happen either. And also, funny enough, Musk is trying to do that with his Neuralink bullshit too. Musk's entire SpaceX program is just a U.S. military, what do you call it? Facade, I guess. The useful thing, the one good thing he has produced is Starlink, which also is for military purposes. It does not have broad internet use. It's not going to bring the internet to poor African children in Niger or wherever. No, it's for the military. And Musk's entire SpaceX program has been subsidized by NASA, which is military, U.S. military. Mike Griffin, who was the director of NASA, bailed out Musk's SpaceX to the tune of $2 billion to get the company afloat. And so they get to continue doing their space programs in the guise of helping humanity, when it's really just about helping geolocate people for them to drone nuke or whatever. The truth is that these people, our billionaires, our generation, 21st century billionaires, hate us. And they hate this planet. They hate themselves too, but, I don't care about that. They're not different from previous billionaires, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, or whatever. But at least the Carnegies and the Rockefellers built beautiful museums and symphonies and schools. They try to leave some kind of cultural legacy. Musk and Bezos are going to leave us with the taste of ash in our mouths. That's it. This space colonization thing is just them burning cash because they can. Space colonization is a hateful belief, in my opinion. To leave Earth behind is to leave humanity itself. The Earth is not something to escape. It's funny that the richest people in the world, Bezos and Musk, so desperately want to leave this place. You'd think that being the richest people, you'd be the happiest, right? More money equals more success and accomplishment and happiness. But they want to leave. They want to get the fuck out of here. Leave us behind. Promoting space colonization is particularly frustrating because it's not feasible. It ain't going to happen. We do not have the technology. It is so speculative that to invest any actual capital in it is just a waste of money. And it's especially frustrating because they're proposing to do infeasible things and ignore the need that our planet itself has, like the needs our planet has right now, which are entirely feasible. Avoiding or mitigating climate catastrophe, cleaning up the planet, making it more livable, reducing poverty. This shit is not rocket science. It is completely possible. And yet people would rather fantasize about things that we will never do. The SpaceX program, besides being a complete waste of fucking money, is also terrible for the environment. SpaceX launches from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they need more and more land to launch more and more rockets. They are being gifted by the state of Florida over 100 acres of pristine scrub and wetland. And of course, you know, the NASA's environmental analysis says that we'll do short-term moderate impacts to biological resources. Bullshit. I mean, we've already seen what SpaceX did in Texas, just kicking up all kinds of dust, giving people asthma. You know, the amount of fuel that's required, the amount of shit it leaves. Not in the troposphere like an airplane, but in the stratosphere, like dust particles that just stick up there and float and, you know, cause more UV damage. I mean, like, they are destroying this world because they said it's being destroyed and we need to leave it. So, well, if you love this little rant, there's more of it, because on today's episode, we're talking space colonization, and I am joined by my dear friends, Max of Schizotopia, and first-time guest, Mr. Dank Deleuze. Forgive their that I'm calling them by their Instagram handles instead of their real names, but you should follow them there. I think both Max and Dank, a.k.a. Dorian, are smarter than me, but in general. But when it comes to this stuff, I think I got Max's number. But anyway, we talk about space colonization and whether, you know, we're go space or no space. So I will say that if we do ever do space colonization, I do hope that Elon Musk goes there. And then, you know, if you've seen Total Recall, one of the all-time best movies in general, but also space colonization sci-fi stories, there's that scene where they get punched out of the airlock chambers and into the oxygen-free Mars atmosphere, and they start to, like, their eyes bug out, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I hope that happens to Musk, and I hope that he never breathes a bit of oxygen ever again.
All right. How's it going, guys?
Yo, you know, you know how it's going. How are you, Max? Does anyone ever ask you how you are?
Well, you know what? Isaac was just asking me off air how I was doing, and I was telling him I'm doing all right.
Go on.
I'm being productive. I'm working on the fucking book. I'm trying not to George R.R. Martin my book any longer. Okay, I'm going full tilt. I promise. I'm working on it every day. The next episode of this podcast, I'll be talking about. So I'll be giving you some behind the scenes about the book. Okay, I promise. I'm not a complete derelict.
Do you feel as if you have sufficient space to work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm making the space. I've been going to the library every day.
So you're going to space.
Yes, I'm making
saying.
sufficient space. Oh, yes. That reminds me, what we're here to actually talk about is Isaac and I were arguing about outer space. So we decided that we would be talking about outer space in the abstract. Now, I have some notes. I got plenty of stuff to talk about with regards to outer space. I don't believe I made you guys do any homework. Okay. I just expected you to show up and yell at me and be as counter signaling as possible to me, which is what I know you guys enjoy doing.
What's counter signaling mean?
Just being contrary to me.
That's not what that means.
being contrary to the ultimate contrarian.
There we go. And it begins. Great.
Oh, is that mean just like me us ganging up on you? Is that what it is? Is that what
It's not just that you guys,
counterinsurgency? Is
it's
that
not just
the
that you guys
word
gang
you
up on
said?
me. It's that you don't do your homework and then you gang up on me. So then it's true.
That's not
It's
true.
true
That is
beat up. It's
totally
true bully the
unfair.
nerd.
That is
It's
totally
true
unfair.
bully the nerd.
You know what I
behavior.
like about the term counter signaling is it's therapy talk for a type of bullying that doesn't need to be solved.
It's therapy. It's therapy. It's just a very pseudo intellectual way to say disagree. Yeah.
Mhm. I found myself saying self-actualizing a lot recently, and I realized I should stop saying that term. It's a very dumb way of saying, just trying to figure out how to be happy,
Right. I mean, to be fair, counter signal is one of those things. I know Bookchin always complained about this, how like cybernetics was starting to invade language when people say, give me feedback, positive feedback. Counter signaling is another example. There's a couple others.
Feedback is a weird one too, because it's, it would almost be a useful term if people just thought about what it's supposed to mean initially, right? As in feedback needs to be incorporated and then, be performed, right? It needs to come back out of you. But I don't feel like that's, if someone's asking for feedback, they're I don't know, man. I'm not optimistic about anyone ever acting on the feedback they receive.
In the South, you're just asking for your cow to give you your feedback. I take your feedback.
All right,
let's get this space. Let's talk about space. Oh, by the way, I did homework. I've done the homework.
All right, buddy.
I'll make it very clear. I watched both the movies last time and then some. So
what I was angry about, excuse me, what I was upset about was that I specifically asked both of you if you remembered Twin Peaks season 3, if you'd specifically seen the episode I want to talk about, and you both said yes. And then when I brought it up, you guys were both like, no, we don't really remember. We didn't really watch it, and we both think it's stupid. And I'm just like, oh, great. I'm glad this whole section I had prepared where I wanted to talk about whatever. It doesn't matter. That was the other episode.
No.
All right. Well,
to get on topic here, I believe we had a kind of philosophical disagreement about outer space. Maybe you want to talk about why you don't like outer space just in general, Isaac.
Well, I didn't say I don't like outer space, but I don't like the space colonization. No,
well, okay.
No. I mean, I think what is there to like or even not like about outer space? That is just beyond my opinion and comprehension in general. But like, when it comes to the pursuit of outer space, I have lots of opinions about that.
Okay, what is it that we don't like about the colonization of outer space?
Well, let's this conversation started. I think I sent you something about Elon Musk being stupid and annoying, and you were just like, no, this is cool actually. And I think it had something to do with SpaceX. Okay. And I just I wasn't terribly surprised, but you were like, actually what Elon Musk is doing is cool and I like it and I'm for it. That's what I remember. That's how this conversation started.
That's exactly what he said.
Yes, that is more or less exactly what I said. We could get into my very Hegelian views on outer space, but basically, like, what I was saying is like, you don't need to like Elon Musk the man. You don't need to like the shit that he does in order to appreciate what his role in history might be. And the thing is that because I'm of the opinion that it was a great mistake that the United States basically ended its space program. What we have today is not anything like what it was in the 60s and 70s. Because the United States basically ended its originally very ambitious plans for space, that gap has now been filled by these billionaires. And I'm totally pro billionaire space race if it forces actual nation states to get involved in outer space again.
I don't know if you can have like a genuinely operating space program without a world war preceding it. Like, you have to have Nazis to like scrape up from somewhere to put to work. I don't think I do not think going to space works without Nazis.
Well, I sort of agree with you because we'll need some kind of, there will have to be some kind of galvanizing event. And actually, one of the examples I brought up, I was kind of hoping Russia would shoot down Starlink so that the U.S. government would have to step in.
That
If something
would
would
be
happen there
so
that
funny.
would force the West to actually be like, okay, we have to get involved in space again because we can't let it be Elon Musk versus Russia. And since we know this week there was a standing ovation for a Nazi, for a
Right.
former SS soldier in the Ukraine. There you have it, Dorian. You have the Nazis. They're back.
All right.
They're
okay,
basically
all right.
back,
Yeah.
and
I'm willing to
you
listen.
could triangulate them into this little outer space conflict that could move the clock forward.
Listen, the only one doing space that use swastikas anymore are Indians. Okay, the Indians are in the space race. They'll probably put their own little swastikas on their rockets, which is fine. The issue, I think, why NASA disappeared from the space race is probably just, I'm going to use the dreaded N word here, neoliberalism. SpaceX is just a private contractor for NASA. I mean, SpaceX was bailed out 2 times to the amount of $2 billion by Mike Griffin, who I want to get into at some point. So they're benefiting from the military, from the U.S. government. It's not that the nation of the United States is not involved in this any further. It's just they've just put it into a private contractor.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of like how we've been privatizing the military, which I don't like either.
No,
I don't. This whole movement. I agree with you that this whole tendency to outsource the nation state itself sucks. I guess in a way I am an old school nationalist. Like I would like it to be the actual people of the United States coming together to actually agree on a new space program and it being a source of national greatness. I like that idea.
Yeah, but there's no more like national polarity in that regard anymore. The USSR does not exist. So who are we racing against now? And that's where it's the race is between Bezos and Musk. That's who cares about space now.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I was actually hoping Russia would do something in space so that it would force us to do it. But then you also have China, which launched a supersonic missile that would circle the Earth, which, according to our brilliant intelligence agencies, was not possible. So it's there. It's there to an extent. I don't know. I understand that we may be past the point historically where this is going to be possible, where something could actually galvanize us to look to space again. And I'm trying to be as white pilled as possible about this. I'm perfectly happy to concede the way things that are going now, it's not good. We might want to talk about maybe the larger philosophical reasons, for what the point of going to space would be.
I mean that's kind of
colonization.
Right. So both those kind of lead to my question, which is just, what do you mean by go to space, Max?
My dream would be that we actually pretty much reformatted the entire economy to terraform other planets, probably starting with Venus. Venus.
That's where the chicks are, right?
Is it just because
we
it
could
has
send
like
all the
a
chicks
thick atmosphere
there,
you
and
can
we
do
could
something
finally
with?
have we could finally have
Peace
dude
on
Earth, dude. No, Venus. So Venus, it's the size of Venus is pretty close to Earth's. The actual upper atmosphere of Venus, because the atmosphere right now is so thick, the upper atmosphere of Venus is the closest to an Earth-like atmosphere or temperature to any other place in the solar system. You could actually build floating cities or floating colonies on Venus, and from there you could. I'm not sure exactly how, but there's debates about what you could do to actually cool Venus down and begin to actually terraform the planet into something habitable. Now, I would also more than happy to concede here, there's huge advances you'd have to make in science to make terraforming, practical. But what I'm saying is that, and this is another issue, it's sort of like, what do we really think the limits of science are?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a follow-up question to that, which would be, I guess these two questions are kind of the fundamental ones, if I'm not if I'm understanding the two of you's disagreement here, but say it's even theoretically possible to go to Venus and make these floating cities. If I grant that, why would you go to Venus where it's hot enough to melt lead atmospherically?
On the surface, in the upper atmosphere, it's actually pretty
But
temperate.
but even then, like, why go and deal with all these issues when I mean, so much of this discourse is based on Earth is going to be inhospitable or unpleasant, so we should go other places and either abandon Earth entirely or let Earth kind of re-flourish, they kind of start over without us or with less of us, and then we kind of bounce back and forth or something. But if you have the technology to like build a new terraformed floating world on Venus, then why not just fix the shit here? Is it literally a space, as in like surface area issue, or like why, or is it just the lust for adventure kind of thing? Because that's the most convincing part of it to me, is lust for adventure, maybe. But
so I mean, I have two answers. One is that if everything we would learn about terraforming a relatively inhospitable planet would ultimately be applicable to helping the Earth.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that would be just like the practical, it's been pointed out many times. There's so many things that we learned, going to the moon, getting to outer space, so many things that we figured out through the space program that eventually did trickle down. This is one place where the trickle down really worked. Did trickle down and were used in popular.
Yeah, it gave us the
society.
internet. Thank you.
Right.
That was great.
The thing we're talking about right now.
Good job.
I mean, I'm kind of in a position here where, despite the fact that I was also bullying you, I'm mostly bullying you because I think that the idea in terms of practicality is patently absurd, and that we're just never going to find ourselves in a position where that's going to be something which can occur. But I'm on your side in the sense that I'm not against us dedicating genuinely stupid amounts of resources and time and energy to attempting it, both because humanity attempting things that they're going to fail at is something that I have a romantic love for, right? But also because of the fact that trying and failing at one thing tends to lead you to interesting things elsewhere. So I mean, I'm on your side with that, but again, I don't see any reason that to think that this has any. I don't think it's possible.
These views, someone asked me all right, I got a couple things. Someone asked me once, they're like, you interview so many people about their weird views. We would like to hear more about your weird views. Well, what I'm saying is get ready, because here's my fucking weird views. Most of these ideas about outer space that I've had came from Kojev. It was from reading Kojev's introduction to Hegel, and him talking about man being a being completely dedicated to negation, and that you had to accept that about human beings, is kind of what got me thinking about this stuff. So I feel like I've answered your question on a practical level. It's like, well, what practical reason could there be to go terraform inhospitable worlds? Well, everything you would learn would be applicable to Earth and just applicable to the well-being of humanity in general, I think. That would be a practical reason. But the other reason, the larger philosophical reason, is that space could be truly be the final frontier. It could be the place where we put all of our will to negation into. It could be, instead of all of this energy going into war, that same energy could go into space travel and space exploration.
Space Wars, Star Wars.
It doesn't. But the thing, well, we'll talk about Star Trek and Dune and those two different competing visions of space. But it could be, something where you had something like a World War II or Cold War economy, except it's all built around the terraforming of space. And I recognize that some people aren't going to like the kind of manifest destiny ideology that's implicit in this, but it's like, the whole point is that we're not going to be fighting wars against our fellow man anymore. We're going to be dedicating all of that energy to the humanization of outer space.
I mean,
I love your gay luxury space communism, Max. It's very happy to hear about that.
Hold on. I know you're half joking, but I do want to say, like, I fully recognize there would be massive casualties and disasters, and a lot of this would be brutal. But right. What I'm saying is the energy would be going into relatively peaceful exploration, not endless wars.
But the technology that's being used for it is inevitably going to be used to facilitate these same endless wars that it's theoretically supposed to be like a event for. Like this is, I mean, I like going to space as a new like a cursed share essentially, but I don't see any reason to believe that this the focus on going to space would number one not lead to the trickle down into more and more devastating and cruel forms of like the subjectification and or Jesus, I've been teaching all day, my brain's rotten, but of tormenting and murdering and torturing people, and that it would be enough of a distraction that we would stop or even slow down. Like it's a nice thought, but I don't see any reason to think that would be the case.
Well, so I want to rewind a bit because before we get into the more philosophical reasons to get into why we should colonize space or terraform planets, I do want to say that my feeling about or why I'm opposed to this initially is because it's just not fucking possible. I mean, we are so far from the ability to do this that it seems like just such a waste to me. And what we're experiencing right now in Florida because of SpaceX, which I actually saw when I was on that cattle drive thing I did, I saw a SpaceX rocket launch up, which was kind of a funny juxtaposition between like reenacting old Florida ways and then seeing like the new Florida. But SpaceX is fucking up the environment like real bad. I mean, we're talking like protected wetlands that are just getting smoked. And the idea that it's kind of like the logic of those effective altruists, right? Where it's this future humanity. You know, we're doing this for our ancestors, like we're for our progeny, whatever. But meanwhile, you're annihilating this Earth, and so that sort of conundrum to me makes it feel like we shouldn't be doing this. Not to mention all the crap it's leaving in the atmosphere. I mean, like the difference between airplanes and space rockets are, you know, the troposphere versus the stratosphere, and like leaving all that crap in the stratosphere is really, really bad. So it is effectively destroying the planet it's leaving, not just, I think, physically, but spiritually too. And I think that's the other reason why I do oppose this. But you know, I was listening to Lex Friedman to prepare for this podcast. That's the fucking homework I was doing.
Stop admitting
I really want to get
A plus. A plus.
I've been like working on my Lex Friedman impression, but maybe I'll debut that later. But he was talking to this guy named Chris Mason, who's like some genomist for space programs or whatever. They're both fucking morons in my opinion. But they were talking about studying that the astronaut Kelly, his body after spending like almost a year in space, and just like the fucked up shit that was happening to his body. Like he couldn't wear clothes for weeks after coming back to Earth because it hurt too much.
That's the funniest.
Just like have something touch your skin. So he had to be naked for a long time just to like reacclimate.
I really like that. But here's our fix to it. Once you go to space, you're never allowed to come back. We just launch you out there and you die.
Well, so two things. One, you know, I agree with you right now. The way that SpaceX is going, it's very caustic to the environment. But then this is the thing where it's like we need. What I'm saying is, this is one of those things where it's like you got to go full space or no space. What I'm saying is that I would, if it were up to me, if I'm president of the United States, I'm saying that you know, we're going to now base a huge sector of the American economy. We're going to eat up a lot of the Pentagon's budget for NASA. And, you know, one of these things is like, if we had a space elevator, which is not that infeasible to build, you wouldn't need all these rockets. If you had it. And then once you got a space elevator on Earth, it's going to be very easy to build a space elevator on the moon. So, and then after that, the sky is no longer the limit. But what was the other point I want to respond to? Oh, there's this larger thing that I want to talk about. And I agree that the argument cuts both ways here. But this is a huge abstract question, I know, but it's like, do you guys think that there is a relative end to science? by which I mean, is there going to be a certain technological barrier that mankind's not going to be able to traverse? It might be, do you think that, we're just not ever going to be able to do faster than light travel, or we're just not going to ever be able to get good enough at ecology that we would actually be able to build Earth-like ecologies on foreign planets, this sort of thing? Do you really believe that there is a hard limit on science?
You want to go first?
I mean,
Ryan?
I'm not totally convinced by the idea of like faster than light travel being feasible. I mean, theoretically possible, maybe, but and then my issue is less to do with whether or not the science is possible, because I don't know if there are necessarily hard limits on that if we especially if we grant, though we shouldn't, that science is always a forward progression, but even of its own like understanding, because again, more and more we have issues with reproducibility of results and things like that. So it's science has a tendency to get in its own way sometimes, and also to lead itself into a direction that isn't helpful to itself, nor is it actually like objectively true. But my issue would have more to do with the spiritual or philosophical willingness to use that science for anything other than making our lives less valuable and more miserable.
I think that
like-
science. Sorry, you gonna finish something, Dorian?
No. I was just gonna keep blackpilling about that. Go on.
I think that the end point of science will be require like to extend science beyond some sort of endpoint would require us to stop being human. I do think that space travel of all sorts will be possible if like we reach singularity, if we can upload our computers to our brains to a computer. Then we can travel through space, because then we won't need our bodies, which will not survive space travel. So it requires a sort of death of humanity, in my opinion. And I guess I'm no space. I am no space, because I believe that we belong here. This is home. And to leave it would be to leave what makes us us. I mean, we have a literal fucking magnetic field protecting us from space radiation. Like we have an actual, I mean, like if you want to get weird about it, like I think it's like we have an actual angel surrounding this planet protecting us. And that shit don't exist elsewhere. So I don't know. It's like we're built for this place.
Yeah, I mean, a version of that would be my general feeling that if we feel that we genuinely have the option to leave Earth, then Earth is fucked, and it's fucked so quickly that it collapses before we can leave, right? Like as soon as it becomes feasible for anyone to leave, we are going to fucking burn this planet to a crisp, right? It's like, it's this thing that Zizek kind of brings up all the time, just this idea of like, if you're a smoker, you're going to continue smoking, and you're going to continue smoking with greater fervor if you believe that you could stop, right? So if you believe that you could leave Earth, then it's never going to happen. I think we do get in our own ways there, but I also think that in terms of like the singularity notion and things like that, I mean, maybe, but I think there are even problems that get in the way there, where like even the most fundamental little bits and pieces of biology are still things that we're having great difficulty understanding, right? Like if you just think about proteins, and just the ones that exist inside of our bodies, let alone proteins that are aberrant or exist elsewhere. We don't know what a lot of them do, and maybe you could do some kind of modeling, especially if you got the singularity, blah 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 blah, that's able to figure that out. But then you have more qualitative questions that genuinely do end up mattering, like scientists, biologists genuinely don't know why proteins are as large as they are, and that's not the kind of question that you're necessarily going to get answered by machinery anyway. It's not the type of question that I could see a machine asking. And when you have such fundamental questions that kind of delve down into things that we think we understand already, I don't see us solving problems that are infinitely more complex and bring in more and more subjective issues. Like how do human being live happy in space place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with this idea that the second you know that there's an option to leave Earth, that means that everyone will just stop caring about Earth. In fact, I think that the whole part of why this would work is precisely because once people know that there's other places to go to, or that there's a larger long-term future for humanity that doesn't require the constantly fighting over Earth, I think you actually get people to be a lot more agreeable. It's sort of like if you have 10 people stuffed in a room and they have to fight over 2 beds, and you tell them, well, actually some of you will in a while. Eventually you will have another room with your own beds in it. No, I think people are going to be more inclined to get along.
No,
Also, this would have to be
I'm
international
not
effort.
saying that we're gonna nuke one another immediately. What I'm saying is that when you have a glimmer that says, hey, sometime in the next 20 years, it seems likely that we'll have colonies, or even if you start off a colony somewhere out in the solar system, then the moment that ends up becoming a real option for any size population, immediately we're going to have such immense resource usage here and such violent extraction of resources and just kind of avoidance of maintaining Earth that's I think where the real problem is, right? Unless we develop some kind of a science where it's just like, okay, yesterday we were able to send people off in rockets, but today we can terraform Mars and send everyone out there immediately, and we're not going to hit any hiccups that cause years or decades long delays. That would be a different situation. But I really feel as if we start off a colony somewhere, we're going to think, well, let's blow the tops off of every single mountain on Earth, extract all of the heavy metals from it in order to build rocket ships, and then sooner or later you have more cancer and death here than is going to be present in a population worth saving.
I don't think, though, okay, if we're really talking long term, how we're going to start terraforming Venus or Mars or foreign planets in general, we don't have to get all of the resources from Earth. Also, imagine if you were like, well, we're now going to start mining every single landfill on Earth. We're going to just start taking a bunch of old junk and recycling it. We're going to take all of the old junk off of Earth. We're going to recycle it into this new space program. And I know that's a whole nother question about the feasibility of that. But my point here is that it doesn't, I don't think it's a 100% given that it has to be that the colonization of space requires us to completely destroy the planet.
Yeah, and again, like I said towards the beginning, fuck it, might as well try it out. But I'm not convinced that it's going to work, and I'm not convinced that it's going to lead us to a happy place. Right. But I'm also of the opinion that as soon as you develop technology or an idea or anything like that, there's going to be someone working on it. And so if someone isn't you, and it is something that could be catastrophically bad if someone else has it and you don't, you probably have to do it, right?
Like, do you mean like new space race immediately turns into new arms race?
Well, or just new space race is new arms race, whether or not it's genuinely exactly that case. But I'm just saying that it's going to happen. Whatever degree of it we can do, we will, in my opinion. So I have no reason to have any kind of stance on it that says no, we shouldn't, because we will. But
well, we will up to a point. But I think that anybody with any sort of engineering know-how or any serious space people will tell you it's like this shit just isn't feasible.
Right.
And so what interests me is the people who promote this stuff. And that's why, to have Elon Musk as your space colonization ambassador, whether you want him to be or not, he and Bezos are like the two guys doing it. It doesn't speak too well to the overall program in my mind. Like it's very funny to me that the wealthiest people on Earth, who should be the most comfortable on this planet, want to leave it so bad. It speaks to something else about, how empty being rich is, but also this kind of like space Atlas shrugged thing. Like they're misanthropes. And that's what was so funny about listening to that Lex Friedman podcast was he kept talking about how as humans, we have a duty. He liked to say the word duty a lot. So we have a duty to engineer away death. I mean, he was literally talking about how we should engineer heat death of the universe, which is just like, are you? That's
the funniest fucking idea in the universe to me right now. You told us about this before the podcast, and I was just blown away by the idea that Lex Friedman, a man of whatever age he is, it's hard to tell
He's
from
like
his
18 or
face.
something.
What's that?
I don't know. I'm joking. Go on.
But a grown ass man is what I mean to say. Is having the thoughts of a precocious 11-year-old and putting them out there and being paid so well for it, and on top of that being just this idea that yes, we should use the entropy dissipation engine that is biological life in order to stop entropy from happening. It's the most galaxy brain stupid bullshit I've ever heard in my fucking life. Sorry, we can get back to talking about space. I just thought that ruled.
Lex Friedman is one of those people that everybody loves to hate on, and I still like him. I don't know why.
I don't think I've ever watched any one of his podcasts, but
I don't know why, because I don't think, the thing is though that he never, I mean, this is similar to, how I always defend Joe Rogan, but it's like these guys don't depict themselves or claim to be like great intellectuals that everyone should listen to.
That is not
true.
But
Joe
was
Rogan
making fun
is
of Lex.
because Joe Rogan's not going to say it's our duty to do anything except for make dumbass jokes and like complain
All right,
about.
Fair enough, but the thing about like everyone was giving Lex shit about his reading list, and he's saying like I'm going to read all of these books this year, and everyone was making fun of him because I guess they considered a lot of the books basic. But I'm like, no, I think that's cool that he's putting his reading list up in front of everybody and saying I don't know a lot of these classic books. I never read them, and now I'm going to try.
But you can't base it off of that one thing. Lex Friedman made his entire career off of pretending to be an MIT person. Like he like would constantly put like, it's like when some fucking chiropractor puts doctor in front of his name or something like that.
Okay.
Like,
he
I didn't claim to be some like MIT like grad person, but all he did was he had like a small research grant to like use their library or something like that. So he's been a fraud since the get-go, and he puts on these like my Lex Friedman impression is just like talking like a really slow Ben Shapiro. It's like,
okay. It's all right. I can see the point then, because I just thought that Lex Friedman was just like a podcaster guy who got kind of big. I didn't know that there was some like he was like doing some that's kind of like some Epstein shit, claiming that you're part of a university or something. Yeah.
You know what's gonna rule?
No, that's pretty bad. That is pretty bad.
Is when Lex Friedman ends up being the first man to podcast from a bungalow on Mars.
The bungalow.
Yeah, he's gonna have a little bungalow on Mars, right next to the water.
Damn. I thought that Lex Friedman was just like some normie dude who got a podcast. I didn't realize that he was like claiming to be MIT or something when he wasn't. Was it that he watched Good Will Hunting and was like, yeah, I'm this guy. I'm Matt Damon. Is that what happened? I'm serious. Like, because now I feel kind of bad.
I mean,
all right.
Well, I didn't mean to make you feel bad, but I do. Again, I think that it's very telling to me that the people who are the most excited about space colonization are the people who hate people the most, because that's what's upsetting to me about not you, Max, but I mean like these people, these billionaires, like unless they're completely stupid, they know that this can't happen, especially within their lifetime. So why are they doing it? I think it's like a potlatch. They have a ton of surplus capital that they can't even use. I mean, that's the thing, is like this is money that they cannot spend.
But I've
already
already
they fucking launch it out into space.
But
that's what I meant when I said that before, right? It's our cursed share, it's our potlatch. I don't necessarily even have an issue with that per se. But sorry, Max, I was talking over you.
But something we talked about off air was that I'm not defending these people as men. I'm taking a Hegelian slaughter bench of history view that these are just sort of like the useful idiots that will hopefully I'm hoping that they accidentally do something that regalvanizes actual nation-based space programs. That is ultimately what I want. So if they fuck around and fuck something up in some way that forces the United States or the European Union or Japan or even India, superpower 2023, I always believed, to actually have real strong national-based space programs again, I'm for it. And what I was saying is like, many years ago, when I was a journalism student, I wrote an article saying that if we have to have a planetary,
Sucker.
yes, big sucker, the biggest sucker. If we have to have a planetary based hyper bourgeoisie, can they at least do stuff that's cool? Because what most super rich people do is they just hide their money and sit on it. Which that to me is more nihilistic and more misanthropic than any stupid billionaire space program. Okay, it's the billionaires you don't see that sit around and hide their money, and what we learned in the Panama Papers, they just hide their money, they do nothing with it. It's like that to me is infinitely more insane than trying to build your own rocket ship, trying to build your own space program. And if that stupid billionaire space program fucks up somehow or becomes some kind of geopolitical issue, enough of an issue that it somehow regalvanizes national space programs again, then it would have been completely worth it to me.
The failure of the space program is a lot like jazz. It's the billionaires you don't see. Excellent.
Yeah, maybe, but at the same time, I guess, for me, it's hard to get to that point because, again, I just don't think that it is technologically feasible. And again, in order to travel to space, we have to stop being human entirely. Like we have to
okay, so this is limit. Okay, we're back to limits of science. And the thing is, this is where I agree. This is like the most this is the soft underbelly of my argument, which is, I would say there's a difference between sort of like the Star Trek, very optimistic vision of space, where space becomes the final frontier, where everybody can go out, start their own little space colony, have their own little experiments and utopias and democracies. And, one thing that's funny about Star Trek is the way they explain why there's no transhumanism in Star Trek is that there was this horrific clone war. That was World War III on Earth, was that, you had these
There are no trans people in Star Trek?
There's no transhuman people.
Okay.
So they're trans animal people, or what kind of trans do they have?
I'm just saying there's a whole in-world explanation for why they didn't use all this technology to immediately start altering themselves, which is that there was this horrible war, and everyone just sort of agreed after that we were going to do space humanism
that they were going to
style.
stick to their assigned genders.
There is this episode about Star Trek about where they go to a 3-gendered planet.
Go on.
What's that like?
It's incredible to watch in the current year, but that is a different story.
There's
okay, so you kind of have the Star Trek vision of outer space, and then you have the Dune vision of outer space, where instead of space being this sort of like place of endless new experiments of democracy, space and the savagery of space just makes us sort of revert back to medievalism, and then it just becomes kind of cosmic medieval empires that go on forever and ever and ever. And I concede that that's a possibility. I mean, I concede that if you really did have a trans galaxy interplanetary human civilization, that it could turn into things that were medieval beyond our wildest imagination.
So I guess I want to ask you, Max. We'll put the technological feasibility to the side, but spiritually speaking, I mean, you believe in aliens and interdimensional beings and stuff like that too, right?
I mean, I'm sort of agnostic about what I think ETs are. As I've always said, I take extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial phenomenon seriously, but I don't claim that they're aliens from another planet. I don't necessarily claim that they're transdimensional beings. I don't necessarily claim that they're angels or demons or whatever. Okay. I just say that I think that there is something real to that phenomenon. I don't think it's all just crazy people. But it's like Jacques Vallée said, the evidence points both ways. And that's what's so frustrating when you really get into the nitty gritty of these cases. The evidence points both ways. And, this is a whole nother discussion, which I've had many times on this podcast, but it ends up being a subject that gets so frustrating and so topsy-turvy that it's hard to say. I don't have like I said, I'm agnostic about that. I don't have any hard opinions about it.
I ask because I think, one of the claims that people who are advocates of space colonization do is it's like we need to extend life. Life is beautiful, and we need to make sure it doesn't die out when this planet dies. But then maybe there's life elsewhere in the universe, and so why prioritize our human version of life is kind of what I wonder sometimes. But also, if we leave this planet, do we cease to be human? Are we no longer human? I mentioned this when we were first talking about it. There's that book series, The Greening of Mars, which Dorian, I know you read. But my favorite thing reading this book was about terraforming Mars and the relationship between the Terrarians and the Martians, and how they genetically altered and the Martians became superior beings, and they could fuck the Earth humans, women, and get them pregnant, but the Earth men could not fuck the Martian women and get them pregnant. So there was like this inherent anti-humanism to it as well, I think. But I guess that's what I worry is, like, if we leave this place, are like the claim that not just extending life but extending human life, the beauty of being a person, like do we leave that behind if we leave the planet?
I'm saying that, and part of this is that I don't think that we're going to be able to return just because of the nature of man. It's paradoxical. It's dialectical. It's precisely because of man's will to negativity, man's endless need to negate, that you would need something like this new frontier for us to expand into. But what I'm saying is, in doing that, you would actually be preserving what is essentially human about us. And I think that even if you started to have, human beings that would have to be adapted to live on smaller worlds, if such a project was undertaken, I think that they still would be human beings, even if they were maybe a different form of Homo sapien. I think that they still would be essentially human. But I admit, I mean, it's kind of terrifying, and your mind starts to boggle if you really take that idea seriously, that you would be colonizing non-Earths and then slowly adapting human beings to live on those non-Earth, like a green Mars or something like that. It is a little bit jarring to think about how fucking weird that would get, or could get. I would like to think ideally that you would be finding Earth-like planets, planets about the same size and more or less reproducing worlds in the image of Earth. I think most human beings would prefer that. But you're right, that's kind of a weird open-ended question. But then what I would say, on the course we are on now on this planet, if we continue on the course we're on, people will start having to genetically alter themselves to just keep living on Earth. You'll have to start like genetically altering people so that our livers can break down microplastics and shit. Like, that's going to get dark here anyway. I guess this is the other thing, philosophically speaking, or big picture. It's like, I'm saying that even though it seems absurd, this idea of expanding into outer space, we're already trapped in this weird techno accelerationist Earth that's being reduced back to a more primitive time. That, like, we are stripping the Earth back to a more primitive age. And kind of going back to what we said before, if you actually like took the initiative to think about, okay, how would we terraform other planets, and then how would that help us restore this planet, I think that would be a completely noble and necessary project.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel as if I'm as neutral of a party as exists in this group of three people that are very polarized. But I don't know that my opinion here has necessarily changed, right? Because I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be extremely damaging, and I think we should try it out.
All right. Well, like, let me put it this way. There's this great section in. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and largely because of what you've said, which is that many of the things, so long as we do it in such a forward-thinking way, even in its failure, and especially through its failure, could lead to better things occurring here on Earth. But it has to be us actually putting in a focus to like you actually very insightfully pointed out, like having a genuine understanding of ecologies, of having a better understanding of energy use, caring more about energy efficiency, things like that, and then failing to use them to a degree that we can actually colonize other planets that would allow all of those things to genuinely be used in order to help us here. But I do think that the moment that it becomes successful, we put ourselves not in a state that I think is necessarily doomed, but I would say is very likely doomed. But yeah, that's my general take here.
Max, you would be a much better ambassador for someone like me for space colonization. I was looking at Elon Musk's SpaceX blueprints for terraforming Mars, and it's so fucking funny. You know how he has like their launch pads, right? Their launch pads are like directly next to like these airlock domes. So
Fuck
like
yeah.
if something wrong with like the entire fucking colony would blow up because they're all so it's just like
Right.
he's just fucking stupid, man. Like Lex
I bet-
Friedman, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these are awful ambassadors for these kinds of
I
ideas.
don't. Okay, but I'm not. But the thing is, they're not men of science. They're men who are trying to just sell you the brand. So I don't know. It's like I don't. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but it's like it doesn't matter if these guys are kind of idiots. They just have to bumble along just enough to actually. I mean, it would be good if they fucked something up or blew something up big enough so that the government finally stepped in and said, "Okay, we're taking control of the space program." So this is a good news to me that they're kind of dumbasses and bad ambassadors. They don't need to be good ambassadors.
I
They
mean,
need to be
one way-
useful idiots.
but one way in which like I like your idea for them fucking something up catastrophically and then becoming essentially nationalized. But the one way in which them being bad ambassadors genuinely really does matter is kind of what one of the issues that we keep kind of butting into and not getting too deep into because maybe it's because it's just so broad and abstract. But it has to do with the general philosophy of, you know, world culture as it.
Did Danka just
Sorry,
mute himself?
what
Okay.
I was flailing, I was gesticulating really hard, and I hit my.
started eating pizza in the middle of his idea.
But they're bad. If they're bad ambassadors, then it has the potential, and not just the potential, but I think the actual result, because they are marketing people more than anything, right? Of causing world culture to view space exploration and colonization in a certain light, which prioritizes all of the wrong things and makes those things profitable. Like it's more profitable to launch 1 billion failed rockets into space, so long as they fail a little less than last time. It's significantly more profitable to do that kind of thing and gets you way more attention than developing a new type of bacteria that ends up converting, like human
the
shit
soil.
into breathable oxygen. Well, right. So if they are bad ambassadors, that kind of primes the entire system to produce technologies which are not just unhelpful but probably actively damaging.
Ruin the whole thing. So yeah, you're right. I guess my useful idiot thing is like the useful idiot, they have to do something idiotic enough in a short enough time span. If they're just sort of mid-wits for long enough,
Right.
then it fucks the whole thing up. Yeah, okay.
I do like the idea of Elon actually getting us to Mars and banning the color yellow. I think that, or Venus, that would be a lot better, because then he'd be developing ways to turn the clouds of sulfuric acid like blue or whatever. He'd be developing these really complex dyes, which would then give everyone in the galaxy cancer somehow.
There was some, I think it might have been Elon. There was someone who was proposing you would launch a cryptocurrency to Mars, something like that. And so the first people who get to Mars, are the first people who get in on this blockchain. And it actually made me think about how, like, the California gold rush really didn't, the most of the people who came out to California looking for gold didn't get it, but they accidentally ended up colonizing and, creating the state of California. And I was kind of thinking, like, if you could create some kind of crypto rush where you had a bunch of people competing to get to outer space, it might serve the greater good. It's possible. I concede that's like the most Wile E. Coyote version of how this could go down, but it's fun to think about.
I like it for no other reason than it's funny. And I really like how confusing the phrase "launch a cryptocurrency into space" is. I love that makes me really happy.
So one thing I love space colonization art and stories. I kind of want to know what were your favorites. My favorite was is Cowboy Bebop, where they terraformed our solar system. But maybe that colors my thoughts on space colonization. It's kind of cool, but not a good thing.
I grew up on Total Recall, and it's an actually
Mm.
underappreciated sci-fi movie because it should be up there with Blade Runner and Alien and all the other ones that are considered the greats. But
Right. Oh,
for
that's
some
that's one of my favorite movies.
yeah, I feel like it's slightly an underrated movie, but it's such an awesome fantasy. But then it's funny because the whole point of the movie is that it probably all is just a fantasy.
Right.
You know, it's ambiguous, but more than likely,
Well,
Quaid
it
really
fades
just
to
had
white at the end for a reason, I think.
right, Kiss Me Before We Wake Up. So it's like, it, it is ultimately, on one hand, it's this awesome fantasy about terraforming Mars, and on the other hand, it's also about how that's just some pipe dream that you would sell to some poor proletarian man on Earth. So it cuts both ways, but that would probably be my favorite, and that's definitely the one that like gripped me as a child.
Mine is I don't know if I'm surprising anyone with this, but The Whisperer in Darkness by H.P. Lovecraft, because it has more to do with forces outside of our control that we can't even communicate with, really, ripping the brains out of our bodies and sending us to space to explore for them, whether we want it or not. And some of us do. I like the idea of being like forced by something non-human to explore the cosmos, and perhaps not even gain like useful information, just forced to
Any
experience it.
information.
I like that.
Well, I know, I don't know if you guys ever heard about this, but after the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy publicly said that he wanted the Apollo missions, the moon landing, to be a joint American-Soviet expedition. And
That's why Ted Cruz and I killed him.
he proposed this idea publicly that the U.S. and the Soviet Union should go to the moon together. And I guess this is kind of my new favorite alternate history idea, that after the Cuban Missile Crisis, after we came our closest to nuclear annihilation, that would be the end of the master-slave dialectic, that these two semi-conscious empires recognized they somehow saw oblivion in each other's eyes during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they realized that there was a larger negation that they needed to dedicate themselves to. And so they synthesize into this, world, liberal Western and Eastern communist space exploration program, and that's where the Cold War goes into. And that is obviously a pipe dream, but I will concede, that was probably the only moment in history where any of the things that I've been talking about could have actually happened. If it's sort of like the peace between the U.S. and the Soviet Union could only be maintained through the two countries exploring space together. I kind of wish that's the timeline we lived in. That would have been the true end of history. That would have been worthy of the name.
That's a beautiful end to the podcast.